This is an epic rainbow, and I'm going to be showing you guys how to make this text. You can use it in any way you want, whether that be on an action bar, a title, boss bar, whatever you want. I'm going to be showing you guys how to do it. It literally takes this one line of code, so let's get into it. Alright, first off, time for this old one to go. Let's get rid of all that and let's just start from scratch. Here we go. So first off, you're going to need to start a loop, and I'm just going to be doing this on join, and I'm going to be doing it when the first player joins. Now you can, whatever way you just choose to display or whatever way you choose to do a loop, whether you want that to be player specific or plot specific is up to you, but in this case we're going plot specific. So let's just do player count equals 1, and we're going to be starting a loop with the process, slash text, rainbow, and then rainbow. Cool. So now that we have a process going, let's also make sure this is set to no targets because we don't need targets. Cool. Now this process will run forever as long as someone's on the plot. Thank you, Discord, for the epic message. And so basically all we need to do is put a, I'm very bad at clicking things apparently. We're going to put a repeat inside of here, and we're going to repeat forever because that will mean it will go forever, obviously. And the next thing we're going to need to do is start getting set up with some things. First off, I'm going to go over how exactly this is going to work. I'm going to kind of explain it first so you can hopefully get an idea of how this will work. Basically, you go into miscellaneous and there's this HSB color. You can create it, and basically it's on a scale of 0 to 360, and then there is saturation and brightness, which you can mess with on your own, but for this case we're leaving them as the defaults. But basically on a scale of 0 to 360, so we can just loop through that and it will give us color. So that's epic. So what we're going to need to do first is set up a loop that will run, or a number that will increment every time it loops. So for this, let's just do, basically this is called hue. If you look at the chest parameters, it's called the hue, the color circle. So let's just call our variable hue, and let's just make that local. We're going to put it in here, so it's going to increment, and we're not just going to do it by 1, otherwise it's going to be pretty slow. So let's just go with, like, I don't know, like 4 should be good. Alright, now basically it's on a scale of 0 to 360, right? So we're going to need to make sure we don't constantly increment forever. We're going to be able to go back to the beginning, and then the easiest way to do that would be wrap number. If you don't know how wrap number works, all you have to do is input. Geez, I don't know, I couldn't say that word for a second there. You got to input your variable like that, and then you got to give it 2 parameters. The first one's going to be 0, and the second one's going to be 360, at least in our case. And what this will do is if it goes over 360, then it will loop back to the front and increment however much is left forward, if that makes any sense. So it's just going to keep it within 0 to 360, and it's going to constantly increment. There we go. Cool. So now what we need to do is, set up another color number, like from 0 to 360. In this case, it's going to be for each character of the text you're setting individually. So in this case, we're going to do character, or CHAR for short, and then hue, and I'll set that to local, and we'll set that equal to the current hue. So now what we're going to need to do is actually get a text var, whatever you want to set to the rainbow epicness. So let's go ahead and set up a var. All we're going to need to do is split text. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is get a variable called text, because that's pretty self-explanatory. Let's throw that in the chest, and then let's get another variable, let's get a text, and this is going to be whatever you want it to be. So let's just start with epic rainbow. Actually, no, let's start with subscribe, because yes. So at this point, you better subscribe because it says yes. Alright, so now we're going to want to split this text, and we're not going to want to just split it at any random point. We're going to want to split it in between each character, and the way you have to do this is get an empty text. The easiest way to do that would be to get text and then 2 brackets, just like that, and it will give you this empty text, just like that. Cool. So now we throw that in there. This is going to give us a list of each character individually. So now what we need to do is get a loop for each of these characters. So repeat for each in list, and then we're going to need to get a variable. Let's just do car for character, and then do that and throw our text in there. So now it's going to basically, if you don't know how for each works, it gets a variable which is the current iteration, and then it goes through a list. So our list being each individual character, and then of course car would be the character it's at in that exact moment. So now we're going to go ahead, and for each of those characters we need to set the color, and we need to set up all that epicness. So first thing is we have our individual hue that we set up right here. So we have our overall hue, which runs for the whole loop from there to that end bracket. This will go for this whole sequence. It's one color. Each iteration it will go up. But we have our individual one, which is going to be for each character, so called car hue. We also don't need the hue variable anymore, so we'll just throw that out. We also don't need the text variable, so we'll throw that out. So all we need is car and car hue right now. So we're going to need to do first is increment the individual car hue. The reason that we're incrementing this is we're setting it to the overall hue right here, and then each time we increment it each time for each character basically, so it's going to, the color is going to go up, if that makes any sense. I hope it does. This one, let's just do by 4, just like we did before. We can play with these numbers later as we look at the text and decide how we want it to be. I'll show you guys that later. For now, let's just do 4, and then we're going to want to wrap that again. So character hue num 0 to 360. If you're wondering what's happening, if you left click on a chest, it inputs the variable. If you didn't know that already, just throwing that out there in case you're confused as to how the heck I'm doing this. All right, cool. So we also don't need that repeat. So now what we're going to need to do is actually set up the colors. So let's go ahead and do miscellaneous actions, create HSB color. Cool. Now let's call this variable color, because it's a color, pretty self-explanatory there. Make that a local variable. Throw that in that chest along with the character hue. Boom. And then we're going to leave the rest of the parameters as defaults, so we don't have to touch that. You can play with that on your own afterwards if you would like. So now we actually need to do stuff with this. So what this is going to, let me just stop for a second and explain. You can skip through this part if you already know how hex colors kind of work. But basically a hex color is set up like this. So we have a hashtag and then 3 sets of 2 digits, or they're also digits or letters. We're not going to go super into detail here, but basically this represents red, this represents blue, and this represents the amount of green inside of the color. And so what we're getting out of the hue, or the HSB color that we're setting here, is this line. This is what it's going to look like. It's not going to necessarily be all zeros, but it's going to be different depending on the current color. So the format that DiamondFire is using right now is and X, and then we need to do each of those individually, and also we need ands in between each of them. It's really repetitive, but it is what it is. And so it kind of looks like this. This over here turns into this. So I guess in the middle, let's just put an equal here. So these two are equal, basically. So we need to turn what we're getting on the left into what we're getting on the right, if that makes any sense. Cool. Let's get back into the coding part. First off, what we need to do is split that into another list. So go ahead and say split text, and we're going to get our color that we're setting here, and we're going to split it. So let's throw that in there twice. So we're going to set color to the text of color that we're setting here, and we're going to split it by another empty text so that we're getting each character individually. So this is an empty text. We just throw it in there. Cool. Okay, now what we're going to do is say that the first part of this list is going to be the hashtag, and in our case what that equals on DiamondFire, or how DiamondFire needs to read that, is the and X. So what we're going to do is set the first variable, or the first value, to and X. So set list value at index, and then let's throw color in here, the index being 1, and then the text and X. So it's blank, but this is and X, and we're going to throw it in there. Cool. So now the hashtag is going to turn into and X. Cool. So now what we need to do is join the rest of the text. And if you look at join text here, we just have to throw in the variable, or the list that we want to join, and then the joining text. So what's going to go in between each character. So let's throw join text and then color. We're going to set color to the color list with a and symbol in between each time. Because if you remember how I was saying earlier, it's and x and then and 0 and 0 and 0 and 0 and 0 and 0, or whatever corresponding character these are depending on the color. So what we need is an and in between all of those, so that's what we're doing here. Cool. Okay, so now we kind of have it set up. The only thing left is we kind of have to translate it real quick, so we're just going to go to translate color codes. We're going to throw color in there, and we're going to go from and to color, and just throw that in there. Or do you need that? No, you don't. Okay, so we just have to throw colors in there, and it will translate that. All right, now that we've translated the color, we're going to actually need to put the color onto the character that we're currently iterating for. So set, and then all we have to do is set to text, and then we need to get our display text. So let's just get a variable called display. Let's throw it in there. Actually, no. We're going to need a variable called whatever you want to call it. Care, I guess. I don't know. Either way, throw that in there, and then we're going to get the color mixed with the character. So it's going to take the color and the character, throw it all together. Cool. Now we need to do a couple more things here, which would be, we need to get all of the characters back into, you know how we split them up here? We need to join them back together after the thing. So what we're going to do is compile a list as we go. So let's just init a list right here. And this we can use the display. So create a blank list display before we repeat. And then at the end of, right before the repeat goes back to its next iteration, we're just going to append our end result here. So append value to display, and we're going to append end character. Boom. Cool. So now after we finish looping through this, we're going to get a list of all the characters put back together, but with colors this time. All we have to do now is make sure we don't get lag slayer by putting a weight of 0. And then afterwards, we have to just join those texts back together. We don't have to specify any joining text because we want it to be the same. Throw that in there 2 times. And then now we just need to choose how we want to display it. I'll just do it like I did in the intro. So show a title. You can do whatever you want. If you don't have title, like this is Emperor exclusive, like, I mean, you have to figure out what you want to do about that, but let's just do a title in our case. You can do any kind of display you want. All right, so now we just have to throw, I'm just going to throw and 7 a blank text at the top, and then display as the subtitle, and then so that it doesn't constantly fade in, let's just give it a 0, 0 at the end. So let's just 5 ticks because it doesn't really matter, and then 0, 0 right there. And then let's send this to all players so that all players on the plot will receive this. And then last thing is we have to wait for 1 like that. And yeah, let's just hope to Lord that this works. Thank God. I was really nervous that I was not going to get this first try. All right, cool. So this is clearly working. It's not as rainbowy as you might like. So the way we're going to do this is by playing with those numbers I said we could play with earlier. So I think if we play with the individual hue color, the amount that it goes up in between each text, and we set this to like 8, which is double what it was before, you can see there's more color within the text, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Like, it's displaying more color as it goes. If you wanted this to move at a faster rate, I believe all you have to do is move this up. So let's just set this to 8, and this should make it go a little faster. Yeah, it's displaying the same amount of color, but now it's just moving at a faster rate. If that makes any sense. You don't want to set these numbers too high, because if you remember, it's on a scale of 0 to 360. So if you set it really high, you're going to get really weird looking stuff. Like, let's just set this to like 64 or something. I don't really know. And then that's going to look... Okay, that's just going to control the speed. That's just going to control the speed. That's fine. That's fine. But if we set this to 60... Oops. If we set this to 64, the individual amount that it goes up, it's going to look really weird. Let's set this back down to our 4 originally. And yeah, see, it looks not as great. I mean, maybe that's what you want, and that's what you can keep. But either way, that's kind of what it looks like when you play with all the variables. Whew. all that takes is one line. So that's pretty epic, and I hope you guys enjoyed. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye bye.